Another successful raid, Eugene.
Yeah, another big trip. Definitely glad to be home. 6, 7 days in Vegas is too much for the senses. So, yeah, there's a couple of days I can do, but yeah, that's definitely at the extreme end of the amount of time I can spend in Vegas. But yeah, another good trip for us.
A lot of hype before the fight and everything, and huge crowd.
Yeah, I mean, like every fight for Israel, well, for everybody really, is just reaches a new level, goes up an echelon. Like this one was more media, more hype, more eyes, a bigger opponent. Israel's pay-per-view on American soil, like yeah. So yeah, we're always dealing with bigger and bigger events, and adjusting and getting used to it.
And the fight itself, you know, before you left there, wanted it to be like a showcase, and listening from his end, he was going to play hell too with a big stick, but it didn't work out that way. You had to go to plan B or C or D or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, like there wasn't the fight. The fight definitely didn't play out the way that we thought it would. We thought that we would be able to draw more activity out of him. We knew there'd be stalemates, but we didn't expect it to be like that. We thought that he would come after us more, especially if we drew certain actions out of him. And we didn't do that successfully. It was a very confusing fight. It was one of the more difficult fights that I've cornered. And it was just we had to be very careful. I thought Israel could do more, but people don't understand like the way that I go about getting Israel to do more is like has to be very, very calculated. If I go out there and start yelling at him and imploring him to like do more, I'm gonna send him the wrong message. I'm gonna let him know that I'm gonna possibly put him at risk. So although I thought he could do more, I had to be very subtle about the way that I was like giving him that message, so as to not give him the wrong message. Yeah, it was just a confusing fight for us. Like we had to really work hard to like get through that fight and figure it out. But like at the end of the day, we got a pretty clear-cut victory. Not the victory that we wanted and not the way that we anticipated, but we adapted, changed a few things, kept a few things the same, and it was enough to get us the victory. And at this level of the sport, it's all about the victory.
When you're up there and watching him, Romero fight that close up, can you see why everybody has been so wary of him?
Yeah, and I said this to people. I said, mate, when you're like, when you're a foot away from the guy and there's only a bit of fence paneling between you and him, you can see why people, hold him in such high regard. Like he's a specimen, and the way he moves is like, the way he moves is spectacular. Like it's not like anybody else. It's like he's like, man, he's just a guy that's been bred to do this from a very early age. And it's quite a sight to behold.
And that makes it even more dangerous to take any chances whatsoever. So if you were giving Israel, there must have been a really fine line, as he did, because the way he caught Israel in the first round, he didn't want to do that too many times.
Yeah, and that punch just landed in the knuckle landed in the eye. It didn't hurt him, but like it's a fine line, and we walked the line. We walked the fine line. Romero didn't even come close to walking the fine line. He didn't want to take any risk or do anything, which completely, if I be honest, I didn't anticipate that much inactivity from him. I just didn't fathom in my mind. For us, it was like you got the title shot. You shouldn't have the title shot. You've lost your last 2 fights. By some miracle, you've got it. You're 41, 42 years old. This is definitely going to be the last chance you're ever going to have at this title. We just, that was what was in our mind. And, we knew there'd be periods of inactivity, but not like that. We thought he would come to definitely put a lot more pressure on us and try and come after us a little bit more than he did. Put more on the line.
You talk about him being a different athlete. Just on TV, and you were right there, the leg, and he was walking around on a leg. I don't think there would be too many fighters that wouldn't be hobbling on a leg that had been messed up that much.
Yeah, I mean, he's incredibly durable, right? He can take a lot of punishment. That's all his fights previous to that are evidence to that. But the leg was damaged, and if you take all the body parts in that fight and what was damaged and what wasn't, and if we judge the fight on that, then the only thing damaged is Romero's leg, because Israel's has barely got a scratch on him. So if damage is your judgment for who's winning the fight, then yeah, the only person that's damaged is Romero, and that was through the leg kick.
Eugene, after the fight, you played protector to Izzy when it was time to leave the cage. Was it pretty noisy, pretty serious, did you think?
Yeah, you're blank to the crowd. You don't hear the crowd. You don't maybe after the fight, the crowd starts to seep in. But during the fight, the crowd is of no concern to me or Israel. We don't know what's going on. If they're booing, they could be booing. We have no idea. We're 100% focused. That stuff starts to come in a little bit more. After you can you can lose. You don't have to focus as much after the fight while you're waiting for the decision and stuff. But definitely, we knew that the crowd wasn't happy. But that's at the end of the day, that's got nothing to do with us. The crowd always like to choose a villain, and they chose Israel. It seemed like they chose Israel, but they could have equally chose Romero. Especially, I think most people who know the sport, most of the consensus is that they both had a part to play in that fight being a little bit. Stalling a little bit, but the general consensus among people that know the sport is that Romero had way more to do with that than Israel, which is where I was at as well, because Israel was trying. He was trying to draw out reactions. He was he threw the most leads. He was the only person that was trying to make the fight. He just didn't get anything back. So yeah, the crowd, American crowds they're different. The American crowds are very different to what I'm used to. They're very passionate about that sport. Yes, we had to look after Israel a little bit, because you never know what's going to happen. People at that stage have been drinking for 5 or 6 hours watching those fights. They are fully revved up by the time Israel gets on there. But it was more about making sure that all of that didn't affect Israel's mindset. So I spent a lot of time after that fight, with just me and Israel in a room talking about that and why the crowd's reacting like that, and just letting him understand that the crowd is reacting like this for this reason, and that we did our job, and the belt around your waist is evidence of that. If the other guy doesn't, if the other guy comes here and he doesn't want to win the bout, that's got nothing to do with us. That's on him. And it was just putting him in a positive frame of mind, because what we did was amazing. We just won. We just retained the middleweight world championship of the world. That's what we need to focus on, not focus on the crowd. That was what, that's where all my attention went immediately after the fight. Yeah.
So you're not worried about going back there?
To America? Nah. America, the American fans, they love you one day and then they hate you the next. They love you one fight and then the next fight they hate you, and then they alternate. They love you, it doesn't matter as long as they're paying. As long as they're paying when they love you, as long as they're paying when we hate you, for us it doesn't matter. What matters to us is what our team and our people around us think, not what the American kind of crowd thinks. So, yeah, of course we'll go back.
I guess the big bonus for you is that you went there expecting a war, and you would have been expecting Izzy to be a little bit banged up after it, because even if you win, you get half a hiding. But he would come away undamaged, and will he be able to fight quicker than what you anticipated before?
For us, it was a pretty clear-cut victory. Okay, could have been. We expected it to be way more dominant than that, but it wasn't out. We weren't having the best night. That was partly due to Romero, and partly due because we just couldn't get in the rhythm that we usually get, and obviously that's a big part to do with Romero and what he was doing. But even when you beat Romero, they say it takes years off your life. Even when you win, let alone lose or get knocked out by him. None of Romero's opponents have come out without a scratch on them like we have. That's people don't understand that, but that's something for the people that really understand the sport and what goes on behind it. That's something for them to hold in high esteem. For your average punter, sits in front of the TV with a six-pack and just wants to see a bunch of guys punching each other in the head, you're not going to understand that. But for us, it's something that we hold in high esteem.
You've got more fights coming up on the horizon now. How long before maybe Izzy? We've got dates for Kai and for Dan and Brad potentially.
I mean, I expect Izzy to push for a fight as soon as he can, and obviously we do. Everybody knows who he's fighting next. It's going to be Paulo Costa, who it should have been, and we should have been fighting instead of Romero. There's a lot of business that needs to be worked out before then and now, but I expect Israel to have the rest of this week off and then be back at training on Monday. He's just got he had a relatively easy fight in terms of physical activity. That was fight week, so he had a week off. Then he had 25 minutes of a relatively inactive fight in terms of his physicality. He basically had 7 days off. He's basically had a holiday, so I expect him to be back. Plus this week, that's 2 weeks off. I mean, what more do you need? Yes, I definitely expect him to be back on Monday.